Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. To purchase and book sessions with AJ Mahari, visit ajmahari.ca. This is the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. And now your host, AJ Mahari.
So maybe you've known for a long time that you've been in a relationship or dating somebody with BPD. But if you're just new to this, it's like, how can you really know what to do? And so many people want to help that person with BPD, right? But can you really help the borderline that you so love, that you fell in love with, that you got idealized by in that honeymoon phase, and now the shock of that's not who they really are? Maybe you've been ghosted, maybe lots of silent treatments, maybe you're in those patterns of on-off relationship recycling with somebody with BPD. You just can't break free of what is a trauma bond, what isn't healthy love, because in any relationship where there's abuse, there is no love. Many people are struggling with all the iterations of this. Whether it's just, I started dating someone with BPD, I've been dating someone with BPD, you married somebody with BPD. Now maybe you're getting divorced from somebody with BPD. People are going through these cycles with borderlines, and so many compelling reasons, but within trauma bond dynamics, that you just feel like you have to keep helping them. Or like you need to save not only them, but the relationship now, because that feels somehow like maybe you think that would be helping yourself as well. It can be so injurious, and people really need to get into healing recovery processes. I work with clients, I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. I work with people that are all kinds of confused. Maybe they just got ghosted. Maybe it's a final discard. It's hard to tell. Maybe people know, some clients when they come to me, that it's a final discard. And maybe people recycled many times with the borderline. And I have a lot of clients who fit in this category also, that they now know for sure they can't do it anymore. They've been so hurt and so betrayed, and they're at that break point of, I've had enough, I can't. And yet still need to learn how to cope with how you make that choice and working your way towards no contact. It's not always that people are going to go no contact and know what they need and know what they want and then reach out for some therapy and some help. No, not at all. And so I just want to reiterate again that in how difficult these situations are, and these really unfortunate trauma-bonded, betrayal-bonded relationships, they are so difficult, so compelling for so many reasons with the intermittent reinforcements. First, it starts off with the siren song of, way too good to be true. This is everything you dreamt of. And then at a certain point, all that idealization, boom, often suddenly, the devaluation split pops up for whatever reason. And now it's like, who am I dealing with? What is it? But people don't even know to ask those questions in the beginning when that first happens, because you just think, this is an anomaly, and they'll be back to who they were yesterday, tomorrow. And then they never get back to being that person. And you keep pursuing them, and maybe they keep pursuing you in those Hoovers and reverse Hoovers and on and off iterations. There are a lot of people out there, even after a BPD relationship breakup, that is no longer a BPD recycling situation. Because let's face it, in trying to survive the BPD relationship breakup, however it comes about, silent treatment, ghosting to discard, they monkey branch away from you to the next person, being cheated on, so much betrayal, so many things that you just could have never dreamed would have ever happened to you, or that anybody would have treated you this way. But now you're trapped in the betrayal bond, and many people are overlooking unbelievably abusive and egregious ways that you're being treated and taken for granted and not seen and not heard, but you still want this to work out so bad. Well, where's that coming from? Why does that feel so compelling? I mean, really, aside from the positive qualities in the person with BPD and what you got more of in the idealization phase. And if you're not with the borderline anymore and you don't want to be, but you're still not over this by a long shot, are you stuck with the cognitive dissonance of ruminating more about the positive, the good times? That really causes people so much pain. So many people think it's a fantastic idea to try to help the borderline or to try to save the relationship. If they're untreated, or what if they're the patterns of BPD and they're not even diagnosed, so they're not going to be treated? When you are with somebody, as many people are, who might be diagnosed, but they're untreated, he's mainly talking to people with BPD, but he sometimes talks to, the perspective of people that have been in or are in relationships with people with BPD. But that kind of information and other information, like there might be 7 tips on how to help the borderline, like some of that information out there. The thing that you really need to understand right now that you probably don't want to know, if the person with BPD that you're in any relationship type, situation, iteration with is not seeking treatment, might have had some therapy along the way, but has not sought treatment for BPD and the efficacious modalities of SAID, which are not a plethora. They are certain modalities of treatment geared toward people with BPD. But if a person doesn't want to go to therapy for themselves, then you're not going to be able to make them do that. Can you help the person with BPD? Well, you could try A, B, C, D, E. But the thing is, I'm not going to say that here. Why? Because when you're with an untreated borderline, none of that works. So you might see some information out there. How can you help the borderline? Well, okay, and maybe you've seen it, and maybe you're trying it. Maybe you did try it, but you'll come to know it doesn't work, because those pieces of advice for people that love somebody with BPD are more likely to be helpful strategies, because a lot of that information, it's not that it has no efficacy, or that there aren't situations where somebody in any relationship type or after a breakup could help somebody with BPD, but that trying to help the borderline by certain information out there, like 6 ways to help the borderline, validate them, just don't invalidate them. Hear what they're saying and, keep your emotions in check. In other words, twist yourself into a pretzel and it's all about them. It's already all about them. But the key thing I want to say here is relationship recycling is not you really getting any new experience with a person with BPD untreated. It's not you making the relationship work. It's not the borderline with any more information, knowledge of who they are or how to relate to other. They're still mired when they're untreated in the approach avoidance conflict, in the push and pull of it all, in the cycles that every iteration of you recycling the relationship with a borderline is going to produce over and over and over. Some intermittent reinforcement, some positive stuff, and then overridingly the negative and the jade conversations and them splitting you to devaluation. So often, and in cycles of relationship recycling, that devaluation and pulling away and pushing you away is going to happen. These cycles for the borderline is going to happen faster and faster and faster. And you are going to be somebody who's losing yourself more and more. You don't know what to do. Some people would describe it as they don't even know which end is up anymore. They're just so exhausted. They so want to be with this person, but you don't even know this person. Because the person you thought they were isn't the person that they actually are. And so that people really have to kind of digest that and maybe be a little bit more focused on what you're going through and what you might need than how to help, how to change, how to try to rescue, how to fix, how to get the borderline to go to therapy. Because even if you get your borderline to go to therapy and you're in relationship recycles and on-off limbo and all of these iterations of situations that are all very painful, if your borderline started efficacious treatment right now, no matter how long you've been together, it's not going to save your relationship. Because it takes a long time for people with BPD to get the kind of treatment that can help them in many different ways, but help them to be able to relate to others and to know the difference between self and others. These are not easy processes or short-term processes in BPD treatment and BPD recovery journeys. I think it's really important that you need to realize, if you're still on the bandwagon, if you're still walking on the eggshells, riding a borderline roller coaster, you feel like you can't live with them, but you can't live without them, which is at the heart of betrayal or trauma bondedness. That right there. I don't know what to do with me without them. I don't know who I am anymore. I need this person. I love them, but often that's need for codependence too. And it's not good for you. It's hurting you. Your nervous system is on fire. And this has implications to your physical health as well as your emotional health and your sense of self. Because people with codependency, your sense of self isn't as strong as you think. It might have been a lot stronger before the borderline. People really need to realize, even going to couples therapy, it's not recommended when the person you're with has all the patterns up or a BPD diagnosis and they are untreated. I work with clients sometimes if you want to try the couples counseling route, but I don't recommend it because it really doesn't work with people who have BPD, with one person in the couple that has BPD. Then there's this, the Mr. Nice Guy syndrome out there, or way of explaining. Oh, and I've read something on a website. Oh, yeah, well, you just have these personality traits that you are a nice guy. Or it could be a woman, and this sort of like what we're calling just sort of, quote, nice guy trait syndrome type personalities. And then I've seen information where people are talking about that and saying, but that's not codependency. Well, it absolutely is codependency. Because when somebody's being Mr. Nice Guy or Ms. Nice Woman to somebody who's abusing you, how does that even make sense? It comes from the heart. It's emotionally driven. But if you think about it, it doesn't make any logical sense. I've seen things like people say there's this technique you can help the person with BPD. You want to calm them down. Do you really want to take responsibility for calming them down? Because if they don't learn to calm themselves down, how's that going to work? For example, there's this technique that you can control your posture and the space and your tone of voice. Oh, somebody said like a respectful police officer would do. I don't know where that fits in this. You can communicate that you are in charge of a situation, but in like a gentle, non-threatening way. And when the person with BPD is overwhelmed and they won't listen, well, they can't listen, they can't process at that point, they're not hearing what you're saying, then this form of communication, which is more basic, it works for a child, or even with an animal, the level of communication that might see you just staying calm, being neutral, observing and not absorbing, controlling your posture, being friendly. But you know what's wrong with that, though? It doesn't work with untreated borderlines because it's often not going to calm them down. And then when you try to do, and I don't know what the technique is, I'm not really here to talk about that, but there are different techniques people recommend out there, and you can try them, but they don't work with untreated borderlines. And so if you try to moderate your posture, if you try to be more gentle, if you just throw yourself out the window, okay, so emotionally, you're not even in the room, which is usually the case with the borderline. But now you're really not, because you're going to, for example, try to calm them down because you want to talk about it and you want them to understand that you really do love them, but they don't trust that and they don't know that and they don't believe that and they don't take that in. But, you're going to keep trying every time these cycles go around. This is a total negation of you to start with, and that's not healthy. And the more often you do that, you're not really going to be able to calm them down. And if they tend to be calming down around the time you're trying to help them calm down, well, I don't know what that would look like. But with untreated borderlines, these techniques and methods and central core way to help a borderline is to just validate them. And if you can't say anything validating, just don't invalidate them. But sometimes, more often than not with somebody who isn't treated, and you're trying to validate, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, yes, like that must feel really awful. Or even tell me more about that, or, like a lot of phrases I might use in working with a client with BPD. Point is, it's too much. it's too much to ask people to do because it's self-sacrificing and it's self-abandoning. So there are a lot of people out there that think that, well, we just need to figure out what more to do. We need to get tools. And there's some people out there, I don't know where, to have these ideas about how you can really help the borderline. But again, I don't know if many mental health professionals would be recommending this. I certainly don't. Why I take the approach that I do take with clients and my information here is because I know what it's like to be inside some of that, and what a lot of people with BPD are actually going through right now when they're not getting treatment, and what that feels like to not have a clue about. I've lived through that and went to therapy and learned. And so I understand BPD in a way from the inside out, but I must just caveat that I never had it severely. I didn't have all the traits, those kind of things. So a lot of what informs my work is my own internal experience to a certain degree with 4 strong traits of BPD. And then a lot of it is relatives that I experienced being on the other side of their BPD. And my parents, my mother's probably BPD, NPD, but more strongly covert narcissist. My father was a malignant narcissist, psychopath, and they were alcoholics, which didn't help. But I've learned a lot from that as well, and in retrospect. And then, yes, I have a university education, blah, 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 blah. Almost 34 years worth of experience working with clients. So where I'm coming from, hey, if I resonate with you, if you want to work with me, you can purchase and book sessions whenever you'd like if you want to. But the point is, I'm not here to say either, so my information is like friggin' unique and the best in the world. No, but it does offer, I think, an extremely realistic, keeping it real feel of factual information that comes from a lot of my expertise. Like I said, there's various ways of developing that expertise. What I already knew going into working with clients, like starting almost 34 years ago now, I wouldn't even know how to describe the experience that it is to work with, thousands upon thousands of clients over this period of time. But even clients I'm working with right now, and probably clients that will decide to maybe book some sessions, people out there in the future, I can just really tell you that just sincerely what I have to say, and whether you agree or it resonates with you, you can't help a person with BPD who doesn't want to go get their own help. And then you need your own help. That's not the same needing of help. But the other thing is people keep recycling these relationships. And often the Hoover cycle or the reverse Hoover cycle or getting back in contact with each other, it can happen like in days or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months or maybe it's 6 months. But what could change? If you haven't been working in therapy with somebody about your codependency and what happened in your family of origin, what hurt you in childhood, which for some people is really hard to unpack because it wasn't capital T trauma. What will you have changed if you're not working on you? And many people don't know how to even focus on themselves because they're all focused on the borderline in these iterations of relationship recycling. Then what do you really expect? The borderline to come back to you again, or for you to get involved with them again after a couple weeks, a couple months, a year, even 2 years? Well, what's going to be different? It's unlikely that anything will be different if they don't seek treatment. And even if they seek treatment, it takes so long. It's a long, in-depth, painful process for people with BPD. And it's not that long, but it's an equally painful process for people who are trapped in a trauma bond, betrayal bonded situation with a borderline, to come and work that out. And I'm out here if you resonate with me, to understand what happened and the connection to how you got into this relationship and why it's not working out and how you need to be able to break the trauma bond to get out of it and what you need to heal and your wounded inner child and the role. What are you carrying around inside of you, maybe, and you're not consciously aware of the role that you played in your family system and how that's affecting you still today, and you're not fully individuated from that. And you need to heal the codependency so that you can be a fully functional, independent individual. And then you become a healthier person and you'll have different boundaries. And I also teach clients, help them to learn about not only boundary setting and the limitations that they need and how to take care of yourself and healing from codependency and etc., but also assertion skills and how to go from conflict avoidance to handling conflict with confidence and not having to fear it, and how to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks about you. But the key thing here is the relationship recycling roller coaster needs to stop, because one way or another it's going to come to a screeching halt that maybe you're not prepared for. Are you still investing in relationship recycling because you think it can change, because you're going to make it healthier, because you're going to help them, because they're going to go to therapy, because it's going to get fixed? What about you getting some help and some therapy so you can know you better, and especially after you've lost yourself more to this person with BPD? Key thing is these cycles are really just keeping you stuck, and it's that intermittent reinforcement that pulls you back. Get that hit again. However, people, like a lot of clients, describe it differently to me. It isn't until one can take at least a break, a period of time, the longer the better. But like when I'm working with clients, often they're communicating with the ex and things are happening, or they're going back and, sometimes a lot of clients are at least at the place where they're like, well, yeah, I spoke to her again, but like, I know I don't want her back. But it's just this sort of like revolving, sort of like an amusement ride, and there's nothing amusing about this, but it's like this amusement ride that just keeps spinning, and you kind of can't get off it, even when you know intellectually that you need to stop this. Emotionally keep being driven back to the next relationship recycle, and you're losing yourself. And so much more to say about codependency and how that's really affecting you, and why it's really important that you don't let that be like a quote bad word or something that you feel is blaming you. Because no, it's just part of, it's probably what has you in the betrayal bond in the first place. And you never started this relationship with this seemingly fantastic person because you wanted to be in a betrayal bond or because you knew what was going to happen. But it's really important to know that until you're ready to start working with someone, to at least work on unpacking how you are stuck in this relationship recycling and all that means emotionally, losing yourself, rattling and putting on fire your nervous system, your emotions, losing sleep, not being able to focus on work, suffering brain fog, cognitive dissonance, longing for them, rumination. And are you somebody experiencing limerence as well? Do you maybe have obsessive compulsive disorder and you don't know that? Maybe you have some other kind of addictions that are also playing into with limerence or not, or PTSD or CPTSD. Many people with codependency are in pattern reenactments of their own. Other side of this ongoing relationship recycling. So, as a podcast is named, Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup, the biggest problem in that is that the breakup doesn't end the relationship until how many iterations and recycles later? And you're getting hurt more and more every time. And maybe you feel it's your fault. But I'm really just here to reiterate again that you really need to look at this, because when you can't live without them and you can't live with them, that is the definition at core of the trauma bonded relationship. And that means it's extremely unhealthy. And that means there's abuse, not love. And you can't be an altruistic, all-loving, giving, codependent person, because that's how you're losing yourself too. It's not just even everything the borderline does to you. It's what you're not doing for you. How you're not putting yourself first. How you've been maybe taught in childhood, unfortunately, programmed, probably covertly, not overtly, to like you were maybe putting another parent's needs first. Maybe the family system was just such that you learned that you had to worry about somebody else, a sibling, or be more responsible, get parentified, be infantilized, or maybe like infantilized some of the time, parentified the rest of the time. Don't let the fact that maybe like your family of origin, I've had so many clients say this to me. I had a great family. Like I had a great childhood because my parents, we had everything that we needed, nice house to live in, toys, and then as you get older, things you need. and you were well taken care of, and maybe your mom cooked wonderful meals, and that's all wonderful, isn't it? But what was going on emotionally? Because I have so many clients that will describe that kind of idyllic childhood, and everything was great, and we had all we needed, and they provided for us, but they don't really ever mention anything emotionally. And then the first question I ask is, okay, but so would you say that your mother or father, were they emotionally available? Were they not really? Did you feel seen or heard? And often for a lot of clients, everybody's different, but I've had clients start off by going, there's a lot of silence to the question, and they're like, oh, I don't know. And some people more quickly than others will go, well, yeah, now that I think of it, and then it's different, right? But they might say, well, yeah, my father was busy working a lot. He was pretty emotionally unavailable and, etc. Or he never came to any of my football games or my sporting events or whatever you might have been into as a child. And then a lot of times people start off and they'll be like, yeah, well, my mother's she loves me, but she's pretty cold, and my father is always doing this stuff for my mother and he's not happy, and then I wonder if that's my future. And so there's a lot that's on the table here that people need to really get into a healing recovery process to really unpack. The way that I help clients to sort of ask the kind of questions to explore and unpack things that you might not even be consciously aware of yet. So you're just so into this relationship has to work out, when you probably know in your head, depending where you are, intellectually that it's not working out, and it keeps hurting, and you're extremely, extremely negatively impacted by it, but you can't get off the roller coaster. That's when you need to reach out for help. So surviving a BPD relationship breakup doesn't even start until you stop the relationship recycling and get to the no contact place. Because then when a person gets there, and I'm helping lots of clients to get there, you can, if you're interested, you can book a session with me. We can talk about things, even if you're still in this relationship recycling. Because a lot of people need help to get to the no contact. Support, help, psychoeducation to understand more what's happening for you, and or to just give that sort of jumbled up what you're going through to actually just have somebody like myself listen to you, start to unpack what really that feels like and what that is, and then I can be of help going forward from that place too. Because surviving a BPD relationship breakup really first means you got to get to the breakup part. And the breakup part needs to be and involve no contact. And of course, if there's children involved, then it needs to be strategizing around extremely low contact and only contact with the children. And then the specific dynamic and incredible difficulties of trying to co-parent with a person with BPD. So whatever the situation that you're in right now, you are just maybe barely keeping your head underwater. Maybe you feel like you're drowning more than not, emotionally speaking. But you cannot make this impossible, trauma-bonded, really painful, detrimental, and injurious relationship. You can't make it healthier. You can't make it work. Can't make it better. And every time you try, you're hurting yourself more. You're abandoning yourself more. You are self-sacrificing yourself more. For what? To the borderline for what? Because you're not getting your needs met. And if you get honest with yourself, you're giving, and they're taking. And people, that's just so exhausting. That is so depleting. That just annihilates whatever self-esteem you had going into this relationship. It takes away self-worth. People lose. If you had self-respect for yourself, you'll lose it. And these are really important things that people need to know inside, right? And validate inside. Like, you're worthy. Your self-esteem needs to be raised, and there's things to heal around and that will help you to increase your self-esteem and your self-worth. And then, hey, with compassion, empathy, and no judgment, I say, nobody who's still in relationship recycling with a borderline can be self-respecting at the same time. And I've had many clients tell me that they don't know how they're going to get through it. They want to work with me, But when they first start talking to me about it, they're like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. I don't know how I'm ever going to do this. But I finally realized I need to respect myself enough to not go back. That's a pretty important piece. So if you've been thinking about that or you've been feeling that, you're just watching yourself disappear as a person that you know that you were, that you want to be again and even know more about than you knew before. People have to get into healing recovery journeys, their own therapy, to be able to get to no contact often and to stop this roller coaster ride of you self-sacrificing you, losing you, and repeating the unconscious repetition compulsion cycles of your codependency and what happened in your childhood. And lots of people go, well, nothing happened in my childhood and it doesn't have to be major trauma. But here's the thing. Something happened. Something wounded your inner child. So now you have this integrative work to do in healing the wounded inner child as well. There is nothing more predictable, nothing more patterned than I've seen in almost 34 years of working with clients, along with my own personal experience, lived experience on both sides of this fence. Nothing is more powerful and more motivating to keep you stuck in a trauma bond, in an adult relationship, because you had a trauma bond likely in childhood, than repeating these patterns that you're not even consciously aware of. So the surviving the BPD relationship breakup requires that you first get to the breakup. Do you think you're anywhere near that yet? Do you need help with that? I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And please know that that is rather going to be inevitable when the borderline is untreated, or if it's a person with BPD patterns you're recognizing strongly, as many of my clients describe to me, and the person could be diagnosed with BPD, but they won't even go and get assessed. You need to take care of you today, and you need to understand that when you feel like you can't live without them, but you can't live with them, it's time to start choosing the adversity and unpacking that adversity and working with someone like myself to learn how to live without them. And it's a process, and I help clients to cope and learn coping skills. Gotta do something about the rumination. And then we have to unpack all the reasons, all the triggers that actually drive you to go back. If they hoover you or you reverse hoover them. Because for some people, this is going to go on for years. And then at the other end of that, people are exhausted, don't know themselves, aren't sleeping, want to unalive themselves, can't function, have lost a job or career. Some people can be in almost absolute ruination. And you don't want to end up at that extreme. So what you need to do today is think about how you're gonna get some help, break this betrayal bond, and how you're going to survive a BPD relationship breakup by bringing it from your side, no matter what the borderline's doing right now, on and off or whatever. You need to have the breakup, end relationship recycling, and work towards no contact. And really, the sooner, the better.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. Our passion is to bring expert information for people that are hurt by someone with BPD. We truly hope you've gotten something from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.